Welcome to Witch Talks, the series for spiritual seekers, witches, and enlightened souls. I'm Hana the Suburban Witch, professional tarot reader, astrologer, and witch, and I hope you're ready to get up close and personal with your favourite witches. Hello, you beautiful human. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so glad to have you here with me on the Witch Talks podcast, where we get to talk about all things witchcraft, spirituality, ex-vangelical or ex-Christianisms, psychic stuff, and everything in between. So strap yourselves in for another Hana Help Me episode of the pod. Today's question comes in from Claudia and Sandra, and they say, Hana, help me. My coven is having a discussion about the difference between charm, spell, and enchantment. We would be fascinated to know your thoughts on this. Witch blessings, Claudia and Sandra. Well, my dears, I do have thoughts on this. And firstly, they could technically all be referred to as the same thing. A charm, a spell, an enchantment, they're all very similar. And the English language is kind of funny like that. So you will see many folks use the terms interchangeably. Whether you're reading witchy books, reading blogs, listening to people talk, listening to podcasts like this one, you will hear people use them to mean the same thing. But if you want to get technical, I'm going to tell you personally as a witch how I use all three very differently. Let's start with enchantment. So enchantment is what I would use for anything that qualifies as perhaps glamour magic or love magic, things that have an illusion aspect to it. Even just think about the word itself, enchantment. Now, the Latin root of enchantment is actually incantare, which means to cast a spell on. So see how I said the English language can be a little bit funky? So the Latin root incantare, according to vocabulary.com, means cast a spell on. Charming actors in old movies often say enchanted after being introduced to a beautiful woman. It is not only meant to be a literal spell, but it can also mean that you're so captivated by something, like a piece of artwork, that you may as well be under a fairy tale spell. You are enchanted. This is why I say that I relate it to things like glamour magic and love magic, because that's kind of the effect that you're wanting to have on other people, where they see you in a different light. Things look more beautiful, enchanting, as if in a dream. So glamour magic is often used to make oneself appear more beautiful, but you can also do glamours that do the opposite as well. Think of it like an illusion or a mask that you wear. Personally, I use glamour magic. I will often draw the symbol for Venus, which is a glyph, and the symbol looks like a circle with a cross underneath it. And I use this because Venus is the planet of love and beauty. And so I will draw that in my moisturizer on my face under my makeup. Sometimes I simply draw it on, tracing over my skin, over my heart space if I'm about to go on camera for something. I find this to be a very simple and effective form of glamour magic. You could have a particular perfume that you charge under the Libra moon or Taurus moon, for example, and at the hour of Venus, and that becomes the perfume that you spritz on to put a glamour on, to appear more beautiful, to appear more enchanting or charming, to win a sale, to win somebody's heart. And again, I also use this word to cover things like love magic, because again, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to attract someone, trying to cast a spell on them to see you in a beautiful light. Now, love magic does have some ethical considerations to take into account. I do have a blog post on how to do a love spell, which you can easily find on my website. And it does talk about the ethics behind love magic, as well as some of the love spells that I recommend to people to try. So if you want to try some enchantments, why not draw a symbol for beauty under your makeup or on your skin with your own bodily fluids? Perhaps create yourself a love altar next to your bed to enhance a current relationship or to encourage one towards you. Have fun, keep it ethical, and let me know how it goes. And seriously, let me know. I love hearing from you guys. Don't think that I'm this big scary person that you can never contact. I read all my DMs, all my emails. You can email me anytime, be like, hey, I loved this episode. I am a sucker for compliments. I'd love to hear it. So the next word I want to talk about is charm. Now, a charm to me is something that I would use to refer to smaller magics, a spoken word or a sentence, the flick of a wrist to symbolize or signify something, or a bracelet that has been charmed for a purpose. So for example, if I feel like I have been on the receiving end of an envious glance or an untoward glance, a glance with a little bit of malevolence behind it, something we would call the evil eye, I will often simply flick my hair over my shoulder, very dramatically, like flick over my shoulder. And that to me is a repetitive motion that I have done enough times to signify that it's not sticking on me. I'm flicking it off. It's gone. Similar to how if somebody spills salt, they will throw it over the left shoulder. It's that bad luck has been banished. It's gone. Perhaps you have a stone with a protective sigil or rune etched into it or drawn onto it. Maybe you've breathed your intent over it, chanted what your intent is, and you carry that stone in your pocket or it sits in your car. That is your protective stone. That to me would be a charm. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a charm. Then we get to the word spell. Now, whilst both of the enchantment and the charms that I've talked about are also spells, when I use the word spell, for me it is more ritualistic. There's a bit more energy involved. So as I said, some spells are enchantments, some spells classify as charms, but generally speaking, a spell follows a series of steps with more than one ingredient. Creating a candle magic spell to promote sleep, for example, that would be a spell. You need chamomile, you need a blue candle, you need a white and blue plate, you need chamomile, you need lavender, you need crystals. I'm going off a specific spell that I've created in reference to what I'm talking about here, but you can see there's a few different steps involved. P.S. You can access this spell as a member of the Suburban Witches Society. There is a whole section of witchcraft resources. There's also astrology resources, tarot, divination, all of that. But just specifically to witchcraft, there is a PDF download with this sleep spell that I'm talking about. There is a spell tracking grimoire page to track the efficacy, how good your spells are. That was terrible. That was said terribly. To track come on, brain. To track how successful, that is the word I was looking for. To track how successful your spells are, how long they take to come to fruition. You can put in what you used, any notes for next time, what the astrological correspondences were at the time. It's a really great one. There's access to my class, Plan Your Year the Witch Way. There is a behind the scenes video of me doing a full altar refresh and why and how. And there's one on word witchery, which is using the wonderful world of witchy correspondences to aid in your writing craft through world building and character creation. So there is a bunch of amazing resources there for you witches. Come and check it out. You can just try it for a month, check out all the resources, and then cancel it. Like, you don't have to stick around if you don't want to, but I think you probably will. It's just that good. But if you don't want amazing resources, and if you don't want to find your new witchy best friend, then just ignore it and keep listening to this episode. So as I said, spells have a few more steps to them or a few more ingredients to them. There's a little bit more thought that needs to go into it, and usually it's something where you have to raise energy. So I don't raise energy and ground myself before doing my glamour magic of putting a sigil in my moisturizer. I don't do that. That sigil, that glyph that I'm using has enough power and symbolism behind it on its own. I don't need to add to anything. The repetitive nature of it adds to the power of it and builds the energy for it. Whereas if I'm doing an actual spell, I'm going to be raising energy, grounding myself, perhaps casting a circle if it calls for it. My mindset in that moment is very, very important. I will set aside time before doing the spell. I will usually cleanse myself physically and spiritually before embarking on it. Like, there's so much more effort and energy that goes into it as opposed to a charm or an enchantment for me. Something like the freezer spell to me probably falls more into the charm aspect, whereas a literal binding spell, which the freezer spell is a light binding, an actual binding I would classify as a spell and put a little bit more effort into. Protective spells, protective rituals, all of that fall under spell work for me. Speaking of protection, I do have a class on using the tarot for protection, and it is free. I will pop a link in the description box for this episode if you wanted to check that out. It's a full class. It's not just like a class that sells you something else. 100% is not that. This is a legitimate class that I presented. It's the replay of that class. It is wonderfully put together. You will love it. And it's on using the tarot for protection. I highly recommend it. I mean, I made it, of course I do, but it's actually a wonderful, wonderful class. I think if you're looking to up your skills in your protection as a witch and your protection spells, this is the class for you. I don't often offer classes for free, so absolutely get in on this. The link is in the bottom of this episode. So Claudia and Sandra and the rest of your coven, I hope this helps you to understand some of the differences between what might be classed as an enchantment versus a charm versus a spell, and how, yes, you can use them interchangeably, or you can section them out a little bit just like I do. If you have a question for a Hana Help Me episode, you can send it to info@suburbanwitchery.com. Next week on the podcast, we will be learning about crystal dildos. Yes, you heard that right. It will not be a safe for work episode, so keep that in mind if you generally listen with little ones around. But I look forward to seeing you there. As always, have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world today, and I will chat to you next time.